From the day I was born, I knew our clan had produced an imperial consort who reigned supreme over all the palaces. They say the emperor adored her beyond measure. After her passing, every favored concubine bore her likeness in their eyes and brows. As I grew older, my clan discovered with astonishment that I not only resembled her in appearance, but mirrored her very spirit. They all said the Song clan was destined to produce another imperial consort. The night before I was sent to the capital, Mother held me and wept bitterly. They say the palace devours its victims whole. She sobbed. Your aunt's favor was but a fleeting illusion, otherwise. Why would she have perished so young? Why must you leap into such an abyss? I knew all too well. Because in my previous life, I met a tragic end within those palace walls. From the moment I was born, I rarely cried. For I entered this world bearing the memories of my past existence. Fate would have it that I was reborn into the same clan in both lives. Yet in my former life, I was the legitimate daughter of the Marquis of Ningyuan. This time, I was born into the family of a low-ranking official, merely a collateral branch of the Marquis's household. From the moment I was born, I knew our clan had produced an imperial consort who held unrivaled favor in the palace. The Ningyuan Marquis's descendants were mediocre. Yet this one consort rose to prominence, bringing glory to the entire family. Though she was favored, she passed away before I was born. It was said the emperor adored her so deeply that after her death, he favored concubines who bore a resemblance to her in their eyes and brows. Unable to contain her ambition, the earl's legitimate wife used the pretext of the old lady's birthday banquet to search the clan for a girl resembling the imperial consort. At 5 years old, my mother led me through the gates of the Ningyuan Marquis's residence. Without a guide, Mother lost her way in the vast estate. Sweat beaded on her temples as she fussed. Your father couldn't come because of official duties. Now I'm late for the old lady's birthday celebration. This will surely bring blame upon him too. I lifted my finger and pointed down a small path, saying in my childish voice, Mother, there's another way over there. Following that path, Mother soon reached the main hall. She stroked my head. Our mayor is so clever. Finding the right way at once. It wasn't that I was clever. I had simply grown up here in my previous life and naturally remembered the way. I recognized my mother from my past life at a glance. She remained the matriarch of the Ningyuan Marquis's residence, still radiating the same regal elegance. Even after losing her most beloved daughter, no white hair had appeared at her temples, her radiance remained undimmed. She surveyed the young women of the clan, her brow slightly furrowed. All commonplace and vulgar, nowhere near Muyao's caliber. Mother led me forward to pay respects. But she didn't recognize me. Only the matronly Zhao beside her showed surprise. This little girl was carved from the same mold as the young miss in her childhood. My mother from my past life merely glanced at me before turning her gaze away indifferently. It made sense. Her eyes were fixed only on my good-for-nothing younger brother. I had been raised by the wet nurse in the manor. She naturally didn't remember what I looked like as a child. Nor did she care. Her sole concern was whether this Marquis's household could produce another imperial consort to pave the way for her son's future. In my past life, I had few relatives who cared for me. But in this life, I finally had a mother who truly cherished me. I tugged at Mother's sleeve and whispered softly, Mother, let's go. After presenting the birthday gift, Mother and I were seated in a side hall. The side hall was filled with unfamiliar faces I'd never seen in my previous life. Not even 2 servants were present to serve tea. I quietly ate the pastries my mother handed me, listening to the women in the side hall chattering away. Did you all see just now? The Earl of Ningyuan's household truly puts on quite a show. Even His Majesty the Emperor sent birthday gifts to the old lady. His Majesty remembers old ties even after Consort Ro's passing. He still treats her family with such generosity. Such blessings are beyond our reach, even after countless lifetimes. I sneered inwardly. Xinye's affection for me was nothing but arsenic coated in honey. In my previous life, while I was still alive, my reputation was far from pristine. Throughout the capital, it was common knowledge that the emperor and empress shared a harmonious, deeply affectionate bond, and I was merely the demonic concubine standing between them. Though blessed with beauty, I wasn't particularly favored when I first entered the palace. That changed when Shenyi discovered that the more he favored me, the more jealous the empress grew. Whenever the empress sulked at him, he would summon me to his bedchamber. Within days, the empress would soften her stance. In Xinye's eyes, I was not even a substitute, merely a beautiful plaything that stirred the empress's jealousy. Yet back then, my devotion to him was wholehearted. Over time, he inevitably grew genuine feelings for this plaything. During a hunting expedition, when an assassin struck, I instinctively threw myself in front of Shenyi to shield him. The arrow pierced my chest. Shenyi carried me back to the palace, my body drenched in blood. As my consciousness faded, Shenyi held my hand and said in a trembling voice, "Yao, once your wounds heal, we'll start anew." Before, when he was moved, he would only call me Rower. This was the first time he had ever called me Io. However, I didn't understand the meaning behind his words. After I recovered, Shenyi issued an edict promoting me to consort Ro. The imperial chefs in the royal kitchen were replaced. I had been in the palace for 2 years without conceiving. Yet shortly after being elevated to consort, the imperial physician diagnosed me as pregnant. I awaited the child's birth with joy, thinking I'd finally have a lifeline in this deep palace. But I delivered prematurely, hemorrhaged, and the baby didn't survive. After the miscarriage, I dreamed nightly of the child's purple-tinged corpse, waking from nightmares in tears. My sanity began to unravel after losing my child. Everyone assumed I would repulse Shenyi, yet he only grew more tender toward me. I cried and screamed in madness, clawing bloody gashes across Shenyi's face. He merely held me tighter in his arms, soothing me with eyes full of remorse. "Yaoer, childbirth is too painful. We shall never have children again." Though childless, I was exceptionally elevated to imperial consort. The consort, favored above all in the harem, yet oscillating between lucidity and madness. My episodes of madness were concealed. Shenyi often visited me, his face frequently bearing bloody scratches. To his ministers, he merely claimed to keep a mischievous cat. In my lucid moments, I sensed the depth of his affection for me, yet his devotion became my death sentence. The empress accompanied Shenyi to the throne, yet his eyes gradually lost their focus on her. Even as my mind slipped away, Shenyi's devotion to me remained unwavering. No matter how virtuous she pretended to be, she could no longer tolerate my presence. As time passed, my lucid moments grew ever rarer. During one lucid moment, I stared at the butterfly outside the window and murmured, "Flowers. Flowers." A maid smiled at me. "Is the noble consort wishing to see the flowers? This servant will escort you to the garden." I seldom ventured out. Yet that day I chased the butterfly right out of the bedchamber. I wasn't quite mad yet. In the imperial garden, I encountered the empress admiring the flowers with the second prince and remembered to curtsy. The empress smiled gently upon seeing me, but her words were sharp. "The noble consort has finally regained her senses. There are things I won't tell you now, but you'll likely never know them in this lifetime. My sister probably doesn't know yet. His Majesty's favor toward you is merely to make this palace jealous. He knew of my loathing for you. So to appease me, he had cooling herbs added to your daily meals. Your body became unsuitable for bearing children long ago. That's why, despite all those tonics you drank later, you still gave birth to a stillborn. You don't truly believe His Majesty cherished you, do you? Even your title was taken from my childhood nickname. You, Consort Ro. Nothing but a joke. Seeing me like this now, The empress should be delighted. Yet her gaze was filled with nothing but hatred. The matron beside her pressed down on my hands, plucked a golden hairpin from my hair, and handed it to her. Holding the pin, she drove it deep into her son's arm. The child's wails jolted me back to full consciousness. They finally released me. The guard slowly drew his blade. Its cold gleam reflected my deathly pale profile. Slumped on the floor, I lifted my gaze to ask her, "Your Majesty, you must have plotted for a long time to eliminate me, right?" She slowly leaned closer, smiling at me. "At first, I did not seek your life. I merely laced your daily perfume with a drug to cloud your mind. Yet even so, you remained too much of an eyesore." Staring at the blood-stained golden hairpin before me, I asked her in a trembling voice, "I won't survive the day, will I?" The empress stood tall, looking down at me with a cruel smile. "That you, wretched woman, have lived to see this day is already a blessing." Before her words faded, a piercing scream erupted from her throat. I snatched the golden hairpin from the floor and thrust it viciously toward her. Chaos erupted around us, the clamor growing louder. The blade pierced my chest, and I collapsed to the ground. Blood mist swirled before my eyes as I saw Shinyi rushing toward me in panic. The empress covered her face, blood seeping through her fingers. The matron beside her reacted, kneeling before Shinyi with the 2-year-old second prince in her arms. "Your Majesty!" The imperial consort suddenly went mad and attempted to assassinate the empress and the prince. Shinyi didn't glance at them, kneeling on the ground and holding me. He ordered someone to fetch the imperial physician, his voice nearly torn apart. He held me so tightly it hurt my entire body. My body heat steadily drained away with the blood surging from my chest. Fortunately, soon the pain would cease. I died. Yet I didn't die. I was reborn, becoming human once more. This lifetime, I had loving parents. I didn't have to be the high-born noblewoman burdened with expectations to bring glory to the family name. Like in my previous life, I could grow up without constraints. If I had no memories of my past life, I would likely have married a virtuous husband as mother hoped, devoted myself to my family, and lived an ordinary life. But I simply couldn't forget the hatred from my previous existence. My former self and my child who never survived, our bodies have long rotted in the grave. Yet the one who killed us still lives comfortably within the palace walls. The older I grew, the clearer those memories became, and the more striking my beauty blossomed. Mother began to worry, discussing my marriage prospects with father. "Once Mayor comes of age, we should marry her off. You've always cherished our daughter most, how could you bear to send her away? Mayor is too beautiful. If the people of the Ningyuan Marquis' household were to see her, I too hope she finds a good match soon." Father sighed. Truth be told, the prefect has approached me privately several times. His son has taken a fancy to our mayor and wishes to take her as a concubine. The prefect's son? That scoundrel? To think he'd want Mayor as his concubine. Absolutely impossible. Rest assured, madam, I've refused the magistrate's advances each time. As I carried the soup into the room, my parents' voices suddenly fell silent. I asked softly, "Father is merely a clerk. Why would the magistrate seek him out?" Father took a bite of his steamed bun and replied casually, "Nothing important. All these years, Father has been a quiet, lowly clerk. Naturally, he knows nothing of the dirty tricks in official circles. He thought that by refusing the benefits the prefect offered, I could escape this fate. In their eyes, we're nothing but ants." The next day, as soon as I stepped out of the embroidery shop, Guixin blocked my path. "You don't seriously think your father's protection can save you from my grasp, do you?" I showed no panic, merely standing there, watching him silently. Why such impatience, young Master Gua? With my background, How could I possibly refuse you? Guisheng laughed at this. You're more sensible than your father. I had him thrown in jail and beaten twice. Yet he still refused to agree to your marriage to me. I clenched my fingers tightly. Fixing him with a steady gaze, I'm willing to marry you. Will you release my father? Naturally. Once you come of age, I'll send suitors to your home. He narrowed his eyes, his gaze lingering on me with a sickeningly cloying intensity. Rest assured, once you're married to me, I'll cherish you. He reached out to touch my face, but I sidestepped him without a trace of hesitation. I offered him a faint smile. I thought I still had choices. Never imagined you'd force me down this path. He didn't grasp the meaning behind my words. However, Guisheng saw I was being reasonable and agreed not to disturb us before my coming-of-age ceremony. My father was released, and our family enjoyed a rare period of peace. My mother's family lived in a small frontier village. Father began planning to take me and mother there to start anew. Yet Guisheng's men watched our house daily, leaving us no chance to leave. Just as father was at a loss, a letter arrived from the Ningyuan Marquis's residence. A month prior, I'd gone to Wan'an Temple to pray for blessings and encountered Lady Zhao, who was visiting relatives. When she saw me, she was so startled she twisted her ankle. I helped her to the pavilion. Trembling, she touched my warm hand and stared at me in disbelief. Young miss, how could you have come back to life? You must have mistaken me for someone else. I looked at the token at her waist and said, so you're from the Ningyuan Marquis's household. Come to think of it, our family is distantly related to the Marquis's estate. Zhao Nanny snapped back to her senses, asked my name, then hurried back to the capital. By the time father received the letter, the Earl of Ningyuan's carriage had already left the city. They still set their sights on Mayor. Mother tossed that letter into the stove fire. Stealing herself, she said to father, why don't we flee tonight? Mother gave father her gold bracelet. When he went to the pawn shop to sell it, Guisheng's men discovered him. Guisheng abducted me to his mansion, threatening to kill my parents if I ever attempted to flee again. Though our family held no power or influence, we were still a collateral branch of the Ningyuan Marquis's household. Envoys from the Marquis's residence were already en route to escort me to the capital for the imperial selection. I whispered a warning, your father is merely a prefect. He likely cannot afford to offend the Marquis's household. With the Ningyuan Marquis's backing, his words carried weight. He stared at me, his smile sinister. If you're not a virgin, you can't enter the selection. Will the Marquis's household still protect you then? As he spoke, he lunged forward and pinned me against the table. Outside the door, Magistrate Gu's roar echoed. Guisheng, you dare not touch her. She's the selection maiden the Marquis's household is sending to the palace. You unfilial son. If you touch her, our family will be ruined. Don't you dare make me look like a fool. Magistrate Gu pounded on the door, making it rattle violently. Guisheng acted as if he hadn't heard, continuing to tear at my clothes. He undid his belt, his foul breath hot against my cheek. Soon, you'll be mine. Men truly are creatures who think with their lower halves. Amidst his lust-crazed state, I reached for the dagger hidden at my waist and plunged it fiercely into his throat. The foul-smelling blood splattered across my face. Fighting back nausea, I stabbed him several more times until I saw the life leave him. Magistrate Gu pushed open the door and collapsed unconscious upon seeing his son lying in a pool of blood. After washing the blood from my body, I resumed my usual gentle demeanor when the servants from the Ningyuan Marquis's residence arrived. I declared, I am willing to enter the capital for the imperial selection. However, since Magistrate Gu's son died because of me, they must provide for my parents. Father and mother received a large sum of silver and were arranged to depart the next day. On the eve of our parting, mother held me close, weeping uncontrollably. Everyone says the palace devours its own without mercy. Your aunt's favor was but a fleeting illusion, otherwise. Why would she perish so young? Why must you leap into such an abyss? I knew all this well. For in my past life, I was Song Muyao, who met a tragic end within those palace walls. I patted my mother's back and whispered softly, "But if I don't enter the palace, our entire family will perish. I'd rather die than drag you both down." Hearing this, Father silently wiped tears from his eyes in the corner. In my past life, my kin treated me with cold indifference. Yet in this life, to be cherished so deeply by my parents, it feels like I haven't lived in vain. I boarded the carriage bound for the capital. While father and mother departed Huainan by boat, word reached me that the noble lady of the Marquis's household had seen my portrait and was greatly pleased. Nanny Zhao told her that even my temperament matched Song Muyao's gentle grace. If they sought a substitute for Song Muyao, there was likely no better choice in the world than me. Before I even reached the capital, rumors began circulating that the Marquis of Ningyuan's household would soon produce another imperial consort. But these whispers were quickly stifled before they could spread. Soon after, news emerged from the palace. A drought had struck the north, scorching the land for hundreds of miles. To raise funds for relief, His Majesty had issued an edict canceling this year's imperial selection. The northern drought had already raged for over 2 months. Yet the selection was cancelled precisely at this moment. It didn't take a genius to figure out whose handiwork this was. Rumors throughout the capital claimed the empress led by example in frugal palace spending, a paragon of virtue. Who would have thought? 16 years later, she still feared me so deeply. But I had long anticipated she wouldn't let me enter the palace easily. After arriving in the capital, the Ningyuan Marquis's household began scheming to thrust me before Xinye's eyes. They hired musicians to teach me dance and music. It seems the path I walked in my past life. I must tread once more in this one. But they didn't know how deeply the empress dreaded my face, one identical to Song Muyao's. Their actions only hastened my demise. Fortunately, entering the palace through the selection wasn't my only path. I went to the drunken fragrance pavilion wearing a veil. The assassin the empress had arranged followed me all the way into the tavern. He poisoned my tea, yet waited in vain for the poison to take effect. The assassin grew impatient, disguised as a waiter, and brought in a tray of pastries. The instant he drew his dagger, I flung the incense powder I held at him and sprinted toward the corridor. In my panic, I stumbled and knocked over a standing screen in the corner. Kneeling on the floor, I propped myself up with both hands and lifted my head. Before I could fully recover, a flash of silver suddenly pressed against my throat, the icy blade grazing my skin. The swordsman's blade flicked aside my veil. I looked up at the nobleman before me, tears welling in my eyes as I cried out, "Someone is hunting me. Master, save me." He lowered his gaze upon me, a flicker of astonishment in his eyes. To his guards, he commanded, "Do not harm her." The pressure on my neck eased as the icy blade withdrew, leaving only a faint trail of blood. The lavishly dressed man took 2 steps forward. His guards murmured a warning. "Your Highness, be cautious. She might be an assassin." He ignored the warning, reaching out to help me up. His gaze fell upon a jade pendant at my waist. "Do you remember me? When I was lost in Chonggwa Temple as a child, you saved me." I froze, astonishment spreading across my face. He just called you, Your Highness." Shen Huaiyan revealed his identity to me, telling me he was the crown prince of the current dynasty. How could I not know who he was? The memorial tablet of the Empress Dowager's birth mother was enshrined at Chonggwa Temple, and she visited annually to pay her respects. 8 years ago, Shen Huaiyan got lost in the temple. I recognized him by the fabric of his clothes and the scar on his arm. I lured him into a hunter's trap with a rabbit, rescuing him when he was most helpless. After saving him, I casually remarked on the beauty of the jade inlay on his hat. He then gifted me that very piece of jade, adorned with auspicious cloud patterns. Shen Huayan murmured to me, "I recall your name is Yunmei." I lowered my gaze. Avoiding his intense stare, "Your Highness still remembers." His gaze locked firmly on me. "I once sent men to search for you." Tears welled in my eyes as I looked at him. "If I hadn't met your Highness today, I fear I might have." Shen Huayan clasped my hand, his eyes deepening. "With me here, no one in the capital dares touch you." I shyly lowered my eyes, my smile not reaching my eyes. Years ago, I devised a plan to save him, merely to secure my own survival in the future. I never imagined he would remember me for so many years. He's quite the romantic, sparing me even the need for love potions. Shen Huayan had me placed in his villa, assigning guards to protect me. With him shielding me, the Empress could no longer act rashly against me. Shen Huayan asked me to follow him, to reside in the Eastern Palace. I nodded, requesting the status of a concubine. Shen Huayan's crown prince consort had long been betrothed to the eldest daughter of the Xiang family. Feeling that the position of concubine was an understatement for me, he sent all the rare treasures from his palace to my courtyard. Among them was a hairpin adorned with an Eastern pearl that I particularly loved. I wore it to the Mid-Autumn Festival banquet at the Xiang residence. The Ningyuan Marquis' household had meticulously arranged this, hoping I might catch Xinye's eye. Yet Xinye was nowhere to be seen, and I was seated in the most inconspicuous corner of the banquet. As dusk deepened, the noble ladies around me suddenly noticed the pearl on my hairpin emitting a luminous glow. It was a night pearl. How extravagant to set such a large night pearl in a hairpin. How could a country orphan like me possibly deserve such a treasure? After that night, rumors spread like wildfire. They all said I was shameless, having climbed into the bed of some powerful figure in the capital. In an instant, my reputation was ruined. To prevent my marriage into the Eastern Palace, the Empress Dowager threatened to take her own life, forcing Shen Huayan to sever all ties with me. I dug my nails into my palms, tears blurring my vision as I looked at Shen Huayan. Now that my reputation is ruined and His Highness has cast me aside, I truly have no way to survive. But I cannot disregard my mother. Shen Huayan's face softened with reluctance as he spoke in a hoarse voice. "Yunmei, I will arrange everything for you, ensuring you live out your days without worry." I wiped the tears spilling from my eyes, folded my hands before my brow, and bowed respectfully to him. Yunmei will never cause His Highness any trouble. Upon hearing these words, Shen Huayan turned and left. He hadn't taken more than a few steps when a shrill scream pierced the air behind him. He heard the maid wail, Miss has taken her own life." Shen Huayan stumbled into my chamber. He snatched the sword from the guard's hand. Its gleam flashed before my eyes as the taut white silk snapped. I fell into Shen Huayan's embrace. His eyes reddened as he stared at me. "Why did you do such a foolish thing?" Tears welled in mine. "Only by dying can I avoid bringing trouble upon your Highness." He held me tightly. I could feel him trembling. He was afraid. After a long while, he released me, staring intently at the crimson mark on my neck. "Yunmei," he said, "I will take you to see the Emperor. I will beg him to grant you the status of my crown princess. Beg Xinyi to give me a proper title? This is getting more and more interesting. Your Majesty, would the Emperor agree? You are the woman I truly love. My father will grant my request." As night fell, Shen Huayan brought me into the palace. I changed into a pale purple gown, my makeup more vivid than usual. Shen Huayan helped me down from the carriage, his eyes darkening. "Why are you dressed so brightly?" I thought I should look presentable to meet His Majesty. I lifted my gaze and asked softly, "Does your Highness dislike it?" He smiled. "I love you no matter how you look." Shen Huayan led me along the palace path. Court attendants who glanced up in passing turned pale with fright. Whispered murmurs echoed in my ears. Consort Ro. It's Consort Ro. Wearing my veil. I turned my head to ask Shen Huayan. But Consort Ro is dead. How can her name still be spoken within the palace? A mocking smile touched Shen Huayan's lips. That madwoman nearly killed me and mother. Yet father still mourns her. Even summoning a shaman to call her spirit back. That's why they say this palace is haunted. His arm slipped around my shoulders. Are you afraid? I shook my head. When I died in my previous life, Shen Huayan was only 2 years old. It seemed he truly remembered nothing. Shen Huayan led me into the imperial study. Shen Yi was reviewing memorials. Now approaching 40. He hadn't aged much, barely changed from 16 years prior. Shen Huayan knelt with me to pay respects. But Shen Yi didn't even lift his eyelids. So late at night. What brings you here? Shen Huayan spoke respectfully, Your Majesty. I have found a woman I cherish deeply. I wish to present her to you and seek your blessing. Shen Yi massaged his temples. It's merely taking a concubine. You may decide for yourself. Father. I do not wish to marry the legitimate daughter of the Prime Minister. I only wish to take Song Yunmei as my wife. Shen Yi tossed aside the memorial he held. His expression darkening abruptly. Nonsense. Shen Huayan immediately bowed low to the ground. Father. Forgive me. I knelt down immediately as well. The surrounding area instantly fell silent. Time seemingly frozen. So quiet you could hear a pin drop. After a long while, Shen Ye's voice finally reached me from above. Raise your head. Let the Emperor see. His tone was deep and cold. Yet I could still detect a tremor in his voice. I lowered my eyes. Then slowly raised my head. The old eunuch beside Shen Yi barked. How dare you? You may not wear a veil before His Majesty. The moment I lifted the veil from my face, I heard the old eunuch gasp sharply. Along with Shen Ye's heavy breathing, he stepped forward, approaching me. I kept my head bowed as the light before my eyes suddenly dimmed. At that moment, Shen Huayan also noticed the strange look in Shen Ye's eyes as he stared at me. Confused, he asked, Father, what's wrong? The next instant, Shen Ye's hand clamped down hard on my throat. Speak! Who sent you? What have you done to your face? Why do you look exactly like her? His eyes bulged as he glared at me, looking as if he truly intended to kill me. My back slammed against the pillar as I struggled, pressing my hands against his. I stared at him in terror. The corners of my eyes flushed crimson. Shen Ye's grip gradually loosened. Shen Huayan was frozen in shock by the scene unfolding before him. Father. Yun Mei isn't an assassin. She truly isn't. Shen Yi finally released me. He fixed his gaze on me, slumped on the floor, and coldly declared to Shen Huayan, You cannot marry her. Nor can you take her away. But, get out! The veins on Shen Ye's temples bulged. His rage uncontrollable. Shen Huayan, likely never having witnessed such fury from him before, scrambled away in a panic. Court attendants escorted me to a side hall. Several matrons entered to bathe and dress me, meticulously examining every inch of my body to confirm my features weren't disguised. By now, they'd surely uncovered my connection to the Marquis of Ningyuan's estate. Sharing blood with Song Muyao, bearing her exact likeness, wasn't entirely implausible. The only stain on my record was the killing of Guixing. But by the time I entered the capital, the Earl of Ningyuan's household had already poisoned Magistrate Gua, erasing that sole blemish. It was late into the night before Shen Yi appeared. He stood at the doorway, his body rigid, staring at me for a long while before slowly approaching. Seeing him, I shrank into the corner of the bed. No. Don't kill me. His gaze softened as he lowered his voice. You resemble Io too closely. I was startled just now. Your Majesty. You mean my aunt. I lifted my eyes, timidly asking, "They all say I look like my aunt. Could even your majesty not tell us apart?" Xinyi sat on the bedside, watching me as he asked with a light chuckle, "Did the Ningyuan Marquis' household bring you to the capital for the imperial selection?" I nodded. The amusement in his eyes froze abruptly. "My selection was cancelled. So you attached yourself to the crown prince?" "He cancelled the selection himself. Yet he made it sound like it was my fault." I took a deep breath and spoke slowly. "Someone wants to kill me. Staying by the crown prince's side is my only way to survive." A cold, murderous intent flashed in Xinye's eyes. "Who wants to kill you?" "I don't know." My whole body trembled involuntarily, like a frightened kitten, my voice quivering. I said, "I only remember the assassin had a burn scar on the back of his hand." Xinyi pulled me into his embrace. "Rest assured, I will protect you. With me here, no one can harm you." My eyes reddened as I looked up at him. The people from Lord Bo's estate said entering the palace would bring me favor like my aunt's. But I don't want favor, I just want to live. The bruises on my neck, left by his grip, had already been treated by the attending matron. He gazed at the faint red marks, his expression tinged with pain. "Does it still hurt?" I steadied myself and whispered, "It doesn't hurt anymore. Your Majesty, please don't kill me. Do I appear to you as a merciless tyrant who kills without blinking?" He chuckled softly, his voice softening. "By staying by my side, you won't just live well, whatever you desire. I can give it to you." I shook my head. "I don't want anything." Xinye's dark eyes gradually filled with desire, the last remnants of his reason seemingly collapsing in an instant. Already overcome by passion, he lowered his head and kissed me. Most of the candles in the chamber flickered out, leaving only a dim, wavering glow. When I came to my senses, Xinyi had already pinned me to the bed. A warm tear fell onto my collarbone. I heard Xinye's voice, now hoarse and husky. "Yao, I never thought you'd return. That you'd come back." I spoke the same words as in my past life. Even my tone and expression mirrored them. How could he not recognize me as Song Muyao? In my previous life, I became Xinye's favored concubine when my heart first stirred with love. Back then, I desired nothing else, only a place in his heart that belonged to me. This lifetime, I desire nothing either. Only your life. After a night of favor, I was elevated to consort Shu. The news sent shockwaves through the 6 palaces. After all, it was unprecedented for someone of my humble origins to be made a consort upon entering the palace. I received exclusive favor from the moment I arrived, residing in Xinye's private chambers for 3 days before moving to the imperial bedchamber. At dawn, I went to the queen's palace to pay my respects. Incense smoke curled gently as the empress sat regally upon her throne. The moment she saw me, her nails dug into the gilded armrests. I bowed respectfully, lifting my eyes to observe her without betraying my thoughts. She was indeed different from before. Once aloof and virtuous, always proclaiming she disdained serving others with her beauty. Now her face was caked with thick powder, her makeup far more vivid. I watched the cracked porcelain-like makeup on her right cheek, suppressing the cold smile in my eyes. So it was my final stab before death that ruined her face. Her eyes bled, yet she had to maintain the virtuous demeanor befitting the empress. You truly possess the same breathtaking beauty as your aunt. No wonder His Majesty favors you. The surrounding consorts covered their mouths in mocking laughter. She's merely consort Rose Standen. What is there to be proud of? Rumor had it she came from a remote countryside. Her background inferior even to the commoner daughters of ordinary families in the capital. But who can blame her for having such a beautiful face? The Empress raised her long eyebrows slightly as she looked at me. These words, I'm sure, were meant for me to hear. She wanted me to understand that in Xinye's eyes, I was nothing more than a substitute. How laughable. Who among us here isn't a substitute? Some can dance the same dances. Some play the same tunes. Some share similar looks and dispositions. Yet among all the consorts in the harem, I am likely the least bothered by being a substitute. I lowered my eyes and smiled faintly. Indeed, this humble one entered the palace with a face resembling my aunt's. To have earned His Majesty's favor is truly a stroke of good fortune. The Empress's expression darkened. A foolish consort spoke up at that moment. I've heard that before entering the palace. Consort Shu was quite the troublemaker, climbing high branches. Only after speaking did she notice the Empress, seated on her lofty throne, had turned deathly pale, her thick layers of powder now looking like dust settling on her face. The high branch I climbed before entering the palace was none other than the Empress's own son, the current crown prince. Come to think of it, I was snatched from Xinyi by his own son. I hear Shen Huayan fell ill after that night and hasn't paid his respects to Xinyi these past days. At this rate, who knows if the crown prince position the Empress schemed so hard to secure for Shen Huayan will remain secure. I sat upright, quietly observing the Empress. Consort Li spoke nonsense. Will your Majesty not punish her? The Empress narrowed her eyes at me. What punishment does Consort Shu suggest? I set down my teacup and replied softly. Take her out and give her 30 lashes. Make sure she can never speak again. At these words, Consort Li's legs gave way, and she nearly collapsed from her chair. The Empress gave a cold laugh. I never imagined you could be so ruthless. I tugged at my lips, the smile not reaching my eyes. I am not as gentle-natured as you, Aunt. I am indeed rather ruthless. However, the Empress was not as ruthless as I. She merely ordered Li Guiren to be taken away and given 30 slaps across the face. As I left, Li Guiren's fair face was already red and swollen. The woman who had been so haughty moments ago now sat with disheveled hair. A pitiful sight indeed. She still seemed defiant, glaring up at me. I stepped before her and raised my hand, striking her face with brutal force. Blood trickled from the corner of her mouth, splattering onto the brick floor. I looked down at her from above. Next time you dare look at this palace with that expression, it won't end with just a slap. With those words, I shot a cold glance at the other consorts nearby before turning away. Having just gained favor, my reputation for arrogance had already spread throughout the harem, making me a thorn in the side of the other consorts. Since that was the case, I might as well cement my reputation as vicious. After today's lesson for noble Consort Li, no one would dare provoke me. At least I'd have some peace. Xinyi was swamped with state affairs, yet he constantly sought my company. At noon, he summoned me to dine with him. Why are you at odds with Consort Li? If you dislike her, I can dismiss her. Consort Li claimed I behaved improperly before entering the palace. I am the Emperor's consort, how dare she speak so recklessly? That is why I punished her. I set down my chopsticks and looked at him with feigned hurt. I wonder how this story reached your Majesty's ears? Xin Ye's gaze turned cold. I know your nature. I did not believe the Empress's words. I tugged at my lips. It seems Her Majesty the Empress has taken a dislike to me. Xinyi snorted coldly. A shadow guard emerged from the darkness. Repeat what you just said. The guard bowed respectfully, Your Majesty. I have confirmed that the assassin who targeted Consort Shu that day was a loyal soldier from the Duke's household. Xinyi waved his hand, and the guard withdrew. I looked at him, utterly bewildered. Why would the Duke? Xinyi replied, the Duke's household is the Empress's maternal family. My entire body trembled uncontrollably. Is Her Majesty the Empress trying to kill this humble servant? Your likeness to your aunt is uncanny, inevitably arousing the Empress's suspicion. Xinye's gaze was as sharp as a blade, a mocking curve playing at his lips. It seems my Empress is far less virtuous than she appears. I've always feared death, and now my face drained of all color. My entire body trembled uncontrollably, so, even before I entered the palace, the Empress Dowager sought to destroy me. Xinyi clasped my hand tightly. With me here, no one can touch you. Tears welled in my eyes as I looked up at him. Will I meet a tragic end within these palace walls? Xinye's hand trembled violently, likely recalling how I had met a tragic end in my previous life. He pulled me tightly into his embrace. No. No. Such a thing will never happen again. Xinyi seemed even more fearful of the scheming within the harem than I was. This morning, after paying my respects to the Empress, she bestowed many gifts upon me. Xinyi accompanied me back to my chambers, ordering every item inspected. Soon, they discovered poison in a box of tribute lip balm. The imperial physician who tested it declared, though the poison in this balm is weak, if consort Shu used it daily over time, she would have died suddenly from blood rushing to her head. Terrified, I collapsed onto the soft couch, my soul adrift as I murmured, "What have I done to offend her? Is it merely because I resemble my aunt?" Xinye's gaze fixed coldly on the box of lip balm held by the physician, his face growing paler by the second. Suddenly, I seized his arm, my voice urgent. "Your Majesty, yesterday in the Imperial Garden, I encountered a deranged cleaning matron. She rushed toward me, calling me young lady, and warned that one must never touch anything within the palace, lest one lose their mind. I initially dismissed her words as the ravings of a madwoman, but now I realize there may be some truth to what she said." At these words, Xinye's face drained completely of color. His piercing black eyes seemed to lose focus. After a long moment, he spoke in a hoarse voice. Go find the person the noble consort mentioned." Soon, Xiao Hong was brought into the bedchamber. In my past life, she grew up alongside me, entering the palace as a dowry maid. Before my mind slipped away, I foresaw my fall from favor and sent her out of the palace to marry. Yet she feared no one would care for me after her departure. While I was still lucid, she deceived me, claiming she was a newly assigned palace maid, and remained by my side. After my death, she was exiled to perform hard labor. Back then, the entire harem was the Empress's domain. The guards, knowing she had been my chief maid, subjected her to extra humiliation. Xiao Hong is only 34 this year, yet she already has many strands of white hair. Yesterday, I encountered her cleaning the ditches in the Imperial Garden. Only then did I realize this foolish girl had sacrificed the rest of her life to care for me. Xiao Hong glanced up at me, her eyes immediately reddening. Only when the eunuch reminded her did she snap back to reality and kneel to pay her respects. Xinyi narrowed his eyes as he studied her. "I recall you once served by Consort Rose's side. How did you end up doing hard labor?" This servant was Consort Rose's bridal attendant. Xiao Hong replied, eyes lowered. It seems someone in the palace harbors such deep hatred for the late consort that even after her passing, they seek every means to humiliate those who served her. Xinyi pressed further, "Why did you speak those words to Consort Shu yesterday?" Xiao Hong knelt, gazing at me as tears streamed down her cheeks. "All these years, I've pondered daily, after her miscarriage. The consort merely suffered from excessive worry. How could she suddenly be plagued by nightmares that drove her to madness? His Majesty dined with Her Majesty every day. Surely no one dared tamper with her food. That leaves only her daily belongings as the target. Yesterday, when I saw Consort Shu, I mistook her for the noble consort. Fearing the noble consort might be harmed again, I spoke those words." She repeated word for word what I had taught her yesterday. Xinyi turned to the eunuch beside him, "The items in the noble consort's palace." The eunuch hastily replied, "Her Majesty the Empress said seeing them would remind His Majesty of her. So she ordered all the palace attendants to discard them. Only a few items His Majesty kept by his side remain." Xinye's gaze turned icy as he stared at the box of lip balm on the table. Suddenly, he let out a cold laugh. I suppose the poison was also slipped into something the imperial consort used. Xiao Hong seemed to recall something and bowed her head forcefully. This servant remembers now. After Her Imperial Highness the consort suffered a miscarriage. The scent of the face cream she used daily seemed different. This servant even inquired with the imperial household department at the time. They said it was because rose essence had been added to the cream. This servant didn't think much of it then. Xinyi closed his eyes briefly and said, "Investigate." The death of Consort Ro was Xinye's taboo, no one in the palace dared mention it. Using a box of lip balm I'd laced with poison, I successfully unearthed this old case. Yet the Duke had once saved Xinye's life and was the foremost architect of his ascension to the throne. Out of gratitude for the Duke's kindness and to avoid the stigma of callousness, Xinyi preserved the Empress's title, confining her to Cunning Palace. My life in my previous existence merely secured the Empress's imprisonment. Xiao Hong felt it was an unfair trade. Yet this was precisely the outcome I desired. That final stab before my death ruined the appearance she cherished most, causing Xinyi to despise her for 16 long years. Now, the Empress title she seized through her maternal clan's influence has become nothing but an empty shell. The imperial harem has always been a place of climbing high and trampling low. This noble Empress must fall from her lofty perch into the mud before she truly understands what humiliation means. What meaning is there in death ending all? I must keep her alive to reclaim, bit by bit, the debts from my past life. Incense curled in wisps from the burner as slanting sunlight filtered through the window lattice. Seated before my dressing table, I combed my hair as Xiao Hong entered carrying a tray of pastries. Had my former self lived on, this would have been our quiet, lonely existence, Xiao Hong and I clinging to each other for solace. After 2 lifetimes, Xiao Hong returned to serve me once more. But now everyone calls her Nanny Hong Yu, and her eyes no longer held the innocence of before. The Empress Dowager was crying foul, insisting the poison in the young lady's lip balm wasn't hers. What did His Majesty say? His Majesty naturally didn't believe it, saying how could a young lady possess such deep-seated scheming? Xiao Hong paused. Now the Empress no longer clamored to see His Majesty. She likely wanted him to remember her beautiful face. I raised an eyebrow slightly. So, her face is completely ruined? Xiao Hong nodded. These years, His Majesty neglected her. She thought it was because of that scar on her face. So she schemed endlessly. Now she needn't scheme anymore. I flipped through the ledgers, lowering my gaze to ask, has anyone visited her lately? His Royal Highness the Crown Prince sought His Majesty's grace and visited her yesterday. I heard he brought healing ointment for the Empress. I smiled. I'd almost forgotten she still had the Crown Prince to rely on. The Empress still cared so deeply about her face. Even under house arrest, she had the Duke's mansion send her ointments worth a fortune, and had the Crown Prince search far and wide for renowned physicians. By the time they remembered me, I had already begun assisting with the affairs of the 6 palaces, relying on the bookkeeping skills my father had taught me. Shen Huaiyan sought me out several times, but I refused to see him. His devotion remained undimmed. He even relinquished his position as Crown Prince, writing in his letters that he wished to elope with me, to escape this deep palace. On a quiet, late night, I finally went to meet him. He had changed into a guard's uniform, his sunken eyes and gaunt appearance betraying his profound exhaustion. You are now the Emperor's woman, aren't you? Shen Huaiyan gazed at me, asking cautiously, you knew you bore such a striking resemblance to Consort Ro. Why did you still accompany me to present ourselves before the Emperor? Like Xinyi, he possessed eyes as deep and affectionate as a dog's. My eyes reddened as I feigned innocence. I wore a veil when entering the palace. I never imagined my face would resemble my aunt's so closely. His dark eyes grew deep. Mother claims you framed her. Your approach to me was calculated, nothing but revenge for your aunt. I smiled bitterly. I was only 8 when I first met your highness. Could I have been plotting against you back then? At my words, Shen Huaiyan's expression softened slightly. I lifted my eyes. gazing at him with playful reproach. It was the emperor who forced me. I never wished to be trapped in this palace forever. Are you truly here to take me away, Your Highness? His voice grew hoarse as he asked, Yunmei, have you ever truly loved me? I forced a smile. To be with you, Your Highness. I would even give up my life. I am the crown prince, burdened by too many responsibilities. Shen Huaiyan raised his hand to gently stroke my cheek. His eyes filled with adoration and reluctance. Song Yunmei, you were the first woman I ever loved. Yet I must abandon you. His rough palm tenderly caressed my neck. Before he could act, the golden hairpin in my hand plunged deep into his heart. Shen Huaiyan's pupils suddenly contracted. I tilted my head to meet his expression of utter disbelief. How foolish must I appear to you? Trusting a man's sincerity once more? Blood trickled from the corner of his mouth. The Empress was right. My approach to you was entirely calculated. I leaned closer, speaking in a voice only we could hear, Your Highness. You're unaware, but I've long had spies within the Empress's palace. Of course I knew Shen Huaiyan, desperate to secure his position as crown prince and restore the Empress's power, had sworn through tears to kill me. The moment I drew the golden hairpin, Shen Huaiyan collapsed instantly. I stumbled back 2 steps, tore at my robes, and dug my nails into my arm until red marks appeared, screaming, Help! Help me! Night patrol guards nearby rushed over. The moment torchlight illuminated Shen Huaiyan's face, everyone froze. The man who had taken advantage of the emperor's favored concubine in the night was none other than the crown prince himself. Shen Yi arrived at my chambers swiftly. I knelt on the ground, removing my hairpin to plead for forgiveness. Beneath my plain white robes, faint bruises were visible. My body trembled as tears streamed down my face. Your humble servant did not know that person was the crown prince. I only sought to protect my own virtue, which is why I accidentally injured the crown prince. Shen Ye's expression flickered with surprise. Why were you out so late? Xiao Hong stepped forward, holding a jade bottle. Your Majesty. The Empress Dowager was concerned about His Majesty's lingering cough. She recalled a secret remedy from her hometown that requires night dew collected from bamboo leaves. She gathered dew for 2 nights to fill this bottle. Little did she expect to encounter the crown prince tonight. Shen Yi helped me up, his eyes filled with pity. Someone tried to harm you. It's not your fault. Hearing this, I threw myself into his embrace, tears spilling uncontrollably from my eyes. The crown prince said he would destroy my virtue. I was so afraid. Afraid your majesty would cast me aside. Shen Yi bent down and kissed my forehead. How could that ever happen? Just then, a eunuch scrambled in, his voice a frantic stammer. Your Majesty, the crown prince, His Highness. His injuries were too severe. He has passed away. Shen Yi froze, his body stiffening. After a long moment, his voice was hoarse. He deserved it. Leaning against him, I let a cold smile curve my lips. To preserve the palace's reputation, Shen Yi publicly declared the crown prince had drowned after accidentally falling into the water. Naturally, the Empress Dowager didn't believe this explanation. She soon uncovered the true cause of his death. This only fueled her desire to grind my bones to dust and scatter them to the winds. Having cultivated influence in the harem for years, the Empress Dowager still commanded many loyal followers despite her decline. After dealing with several palace attendants who had attempted to assassinate me, I grew weary and went to see the Empress in Cunning Palace. By then, her right cheek had completely rotted away, concealed only by strands of loose hair. The once peerlessly beautiful Empress now resembled nothing more than a madwoman. Her eyes, bloodshot and wild, fixed on me. It's all because of you. You wretch. You killed Yenner, and you dare come here? I adjusted the hairpin in my bun and smiled softly. I felt unwell this morning and summoned the imperial physician to take my pulse. He announced I am with child. Hate nearly bled from the Empress's eyes. You came only to tell me my son is gone. Yet you carry a new life within you? The physician informed His Majesty I was 1 month pregnant. Though in truth, the child within me is nearly 2 months old. I gently stroked my belly, lowering my gaze as I smiled. After the Crown Prince's passing, Your Majesty's cough grew worse. It took a month of recuperation to restore your health. She stared blankly at my belly, murmuring, It's Yennefer. This is Yennefer's child? I smiled faintly, saying nothing. The Empress raised her eyes to meet mine. Why did you tell me this? I raised an eyebrow. Your Majesty, I am famously afraid of death. Naturally. I hope the Empress Dowager will spare my life. The Empress Dowager's body stiffened. The shard of porcelain hidden in her hand sliced open her palm, blood trickling down her wrist. How laughable. She clearly wanted to devour me alive. Yet she couldn't kill me. After all, the child in my womb was the only bloodline her son had left behind in this world. From that day forward, the Empress no longer pursued my death. With nowhere to vent her seething resentment, she finally remembered whom to blame. It was Xinyi who, disregarding years of marital bonds, imprisoned her in the cunning palace, a place as cold as the cold palace, subjecting her to endless humiliation. It was Xinyi who, for the sake of another woman, rejected her son, allowing him to die under mysterious circumstances. It was Xinyi who had driven her to this ruin. Soon, she found her chance for vengeance. War at the frontier grew urgent, and the court dispatched the capital's garrison to defend the border. Only the city defense regiment under her brother Xue Fang remained to guard the capital. As night fell, rebel forces breached the palace gates and swiftly advanced upon my bedchamber. Xue Fang sat astride his horse, pointing his sword at me as he ordered his men, slash her face and take her away. Be gentle, don't disturb the Empress's pregnancy. I stood rooted to the spot, offering him a faint smile. I deceived Her Majesty. I said, the child within me is not Shenhuayan's. The Xue family will hold no place in this realm. What did you say? Xue Fang froze, his eyes narrowing with fury. So what? Every prince in this palace is my elder sister's child. If that's the case, there's no need to spare you. His eyes bulged as he swung his sword at me. In that instant, a hail of arrows poured down. Xue Fang died, pierced by countless arrows. I stared at his eyes, still wide open, and smiled. All of today's events were merely a trap to lure you in. The border garrison never requested reinforcements from the court. The moment the Empress plotted her rebellion, Xinyi had already begun his counterplay. I withdrew my gaze, drew 2 pills from my waistband, and swallowed them in one gulp. Soon, blood trickled slowly down my thigh, soaking my skirt hem and dripping onto the brick floor. Panicked screams erupted from the maidservants nearby. Oh no! Her Majesty is bleeding. Quick! Summon the imperial physician. Hurry! Summon the physician. I collapsed to the floor, my vision blurred behind a blood-stained glass. Before consciousness faded, I saw Xinyi, his face deathly pale, stumbling toward me. Upon seeing the pool of blood beneath me, he suddenly choked up a mouthful of blood. He had longed for this child for so very long. He even told others that the child he and Io had conceived had returned. How could he say such a thing? In my past life, the cold medicines he administered ruined my body, causing the child to die in utero. He was the one who killed my child. The child could never return. After my miscarriage, Xinyi fell gravely ill. He managed to handle the affairs of the Duke's residence before his health completely collapsed. My own health recovered quickly, and I tended to him daily by his bedside, administering his medicines. He grew increasingly trusting of me, consulting me openly during discussions with ministers. He even asked which prince I wished to see named Crown Prince. I paused slightly before replying. Then your majesty should name the fifth prince. He drank the medicine I fed him. Why? I gently set down the medicine bowl. His birth mother, Consort E, is of a quiet and unassuming nature. If she were to manage the harem, our lives as consorts would not be too harsh. I shall have you raise the fifth prince and support you to become empress. I lowered my gaze. This humble consort does not wish to raise another's child. He placed his hand on mine. We will have our own children in time. I shook my head. Childbirth is too painful. I do not wish to bear children anymore. Xinye's gaze grew distant as he looked at me, but soon he drifted into a drowsy sleep. When he awoke the next day, he registered the fifth prince under my name and issued an edict proclaiming him crown prince. After my miscarriage, I was elevated to imperial consort. Now, my ascension to empress is imminent. Such immense favor has made the Ningyuan Marquis' household unrivaled in the capital, overshadowing all the princes and nobles. This has prompted my younger brother, spoiled beyond redemption by our mother in my previous life, to stir up yet more trouble. When I visited Xinyi, I mentioned the Ningyuan Marquis' estate. The Earl of Ningyuan, consumed by jealousy over a courtesan, caused several deaths. I ordered the Ministry of Justice to execute him. Xinye's expression turned cold. He was Io's own brother, and the sole heir of the Ningyuan Marquisate. I gave a cold laugh. Why keep such a beast who brought shame upon his aunt? Xinyi closed his eyes. You are too ruthless. Truly, you still cannot compare to Io. Your Majesty speaks rightly. This servant is indeed ruthless. I asked him with a smile, did your Majesty hear the woman's screams last night? He stared at me without speaking, so I answered for myself. When your Majesty ordered the Empress's execution, she was already mad beyond reason. I did not wish her to die in such obscurity, so I replaced the poison intended for her. She suffered for 2 full hours, her internal organs rotting away until death. Your Majesty, with such agony, she must have been lucid in her final moments. Wouldn't you agree? Xinye's gaze grew increasingly distant. She suffered enough humiliation. Why torment her further? I gave a cold laugh, because I hate her. And not only her, I hate you too. My mere feigned pregnancy reduced you to this illness. It seems you truly have feelings for me. Your Majesty, you must remain calm. Otherwise, the surge of blood may cause you to die suddenly. He snapped back to awareness, clutching his chest as he looked at me. His once passionate eyes now glowed crimson. You poisoned me. You venomous woman. This poison, I prepared it for you before entering the palace. I lowered my gaze to wipe my hands, then curved my lips into a smile. If not for the poison, Your Majesty, why would you have suffered a fatal heart attack and fallen gravely ill? Blood gushed from his nose and mouth. He opened his lips, but no sound emerged. I laughed. I've dismissed all the palace attendants. Your Majesty, you'd best conserve your strength. Unable to speak, he could only listen to my words. Your Majesty, I recall your greatest wish was to be buried alongside Consort Ro after death, to be husband and wife in the next life. But yesterday, I had her body and that of her child exhumed. Their ashes were scattered into the lake. You two shall never meet again in the afterlife. However, I shall have you buried alongside the Empress. You two shall be inseparable, life after life. Xinyi stared at me fixedly, coughing up a mouthful of black blood. Summoning his last ounce of strength, he uttered one sentence. I was wrong. You're not Yao. She wouldn't be this cruel. I laughed until tears streamed down my face, but I am her. Lord Yi. Xinye's dilating pupils suddenly contracted. In my previous life, during my first night in the Emperor's bedchamber, I waited for him for a long time. Through layers of gauze curtains, I softly asked the indistinct figure, Eunuch, Will His Majesty come tonight? The figure remained silent. I asked again, "What is your name?" "Eunuch?" He replied. "Yi. Eunuch Yi. May I ask?" I lifted my gaze and saw Shen Yi, clad in bright yellow, smiling at me. Only the two of us knew this secret. Before succumbing to the poison, Shen Yi finally recognized me. When the new emperor ascended the throne, everyone assumed I would become Empress Dowager. Yet the palace announced my sudden death from a mysterious illness. The new emperor's birth mother, Consort Yi, was elevated to Empress Dowager. Before leaving the palace, I met with her once. I smiled and asked her, "All the women in this palace hate me. Why is it that you alone do not?" She shook her head. "Perhaps because you bear such a striking resemblance to Muyao. I simply cannot bring myself to hate you." I curved my lips at her. "I never thanked you for my aunt, for arranging for many of her people to be taken care of after her death. It's a pity that little Han was watched so closely. I never found a chance to let her leave the palace. But it's fine now, she can leave with you." She lifted her eyes to meet mine and asked, "Are you leaving like this? Aren't you afraid your enemies will seek revenge?" "Enemies? All my enemies are dead." I smiled at her. Mother never liked me staying locked away in the palace forever. So I must leave. I left the capital with Xiao Hong. I told her, "Since I have a home now, she has one too. Fate would have it that in both my lifetimes, I was reborn into the same family." Father sat in the courtyard, his abacus clicking as he did the accounts. Mother set the dishes on the table and sighed to Father. "I wonder if Mayor is suffering out there." When she looked up again, her movements froze. I stood before the courtyard gate, my eyes brimming with tears. "Father, Mother, I'm back." The withered tree in the courtyard sprouted fresh green buds, and the wind scattered fallen blossoms across the steps. Father and Mother asked nothing. They only said to me, "It's good you're back." The end.